trips your trigger.
I'm an old geezer.
Whatever trips your trigger,
I'm an
whatever
old
suits your
geezer.
general.
The name is familiar. I can't place his face.
Anyway, he was a colonel later, and he came here as a captain.
Yeah.
And they used to do stuff, but we'd go to their house.
Ooh, you have a long one, Christy.
Yeah, they put Ernie to work. Yeah.
So I was gonna get them a T-shirt saying, for Bob, I was gonna get him one that said geezer, and for Ernie, I was gonna get one that said geezer in training. But I never did. I'm sorry I
funny.
didn't.
That's funny.
Yeah, and she's got the long one this time. Christine, drink your water.
I know.
Drink it.
Should I have practiced before I say this?
Probably. Don't
make-
do what I did
just
to
make
that
sure you
poor
get her-
person's
make sure you
name
get her
last
breath.
week.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular city council meeting for 24 May for the city of Sierra Vista. We'll start tonight, as we always do, with a roll call. Ms. Adams.
Mayor Rick Mueller,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Alicia Ash,
Present.
Councilmember Bob Blanchard,
Here.
Councilmember Gwen Calhoun,
Present.
Councilmember Rachel Gray,
Present.
Councilmember Craig Mount, Councilmember Christine Wolf.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adams. We'll start tonight with the invocation led by Councilwoman Calhoun and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Blanchard. Will you please rise?
Prayer for city government. God of power and might, wisdom and justice, through you authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, and judgment is decreed. Assist with your spirit of counsel and fortitude our mayor, city council, and staff, and all government leaders. May we always seek the way of righteousness, justice, and mercy. Grant that we may be enabled by your powerful protection to lead our city with honesty and integrity. Amen.
Mr. Blanchard.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Mrs. Calhoun. Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. We'll now move for the acceptance of the agenda. Councilwoman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the regular city council meeting agenda for May 24th, 2018 be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additions, completions, corrections? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We have no awards tonight, so we'll go to the city manager's report. Mr. Patuchik.
Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. Our next work session is scheduled for the 11th of June at 3 p.m. here in the city council chambers, and that will be the first more formal budget work session in a series of 3 scheduled. The next date, the 12th, which is Tuesday, also at 3 p.m. in the council chambers, will include the normal update work session as well as a continuation of discussions on the proposed budget. And then on June 13th, also at 3 p.m., continuation of budget discussions if needed. Just one project tonight, and that involves the animal control surgical expansion. I talked about that last time. The advertisement for that was published on May 13th, and then bids will be opened on June 22nd. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Patuchik. Any questions or discussion from Mr. Patuchik on his report? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 2, the consent agenda. Ms. Wolf.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the consent agenda consisting of the City Council meeting minutes of May 10th, 2018, Resolution 2018-040, acceptance of public improvements for Mesa Verde Estates, lots 133 to 207, release of subdividers agreement and third-party trust agreement and Resolution 2018-041, appointment of Colleen Rotifer, said term to expire December 31st, 2019, and Mike Magnuson, said term to expire December 31st, 2018, to the Tourism Commission be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections to the minutes on the minutes for May 10? Any other discussion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go on to a public hearing item. Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff is seeking council direction and public input on the draft 2018 Annual Action Plan for Community Development Block Grant Funding. The document is posted on the city's website under the public comment items and is available for public viewing at City Hall and in the city's public library. Following the 30-day public comment period, the plan will be considered for final adoption, along with any comments that are received at your regular meeting on June 28th. The submission deadline to HUD is June 30th. The amount we're expecting to receive is $260,652, which represents a 10% increase over last year's funding allotment. We've allocated the increase above the initial estimate towards ADA sidewalk ramps. To you at the public hearing last March 8th. The projects include a drainage study for the Sullivan neighborhood, estimated cost $70,000. Phase 1 demolition of the old Fleet building at the Public Works Yard on North Avenue, estimated at $60,000 on the water storage tank on the southeast corner of Denman Avenue and Canyon Drive for $10,000, which will be supplemented by a $5,000 contribution from Liberty Water. We'll also pay for a fresh base coat and a sprucing up of the property before the project begins, if it's approved. The program services provided in the plan include granting the Boys and Girls Club $15,000 towards after-school program scholarships, benefiting kids from low to moderate income families, and $15,000 to Wellness Connections for the Working Well project designed to assist disadvantaged persons secure employment. The primary national objectives of the program are the development of viable communities, principally for low to moderate income persons through public improvements to revitalize neighborhoods, housing rehabilitation, and expanding economic development opportunities. We're going into our 5th year as a direct recipient of annual grant funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and have undertaken a number of successful projects that have made a lasting impact on the community, and we hope to do the same with the proposed plan. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Mr. McLaughlin? And again, for the public, I'll tell you that we've talked about this several times to include it in the work session. And there's no action or vote required tonight. We just put it out for a 30-day period so we can get additional public comment before we do our final vote after the 30-day period to approve it. And then at some point in time, since the funds were allocated this year, which it was a question,
right?
At some point in time, we'll get the funds to be able to action a plan. Okay, so we'll now move on to new business, and we'll go to item number 4, Mrs. Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2018-039, codification of the Code of Ordinances and declaring a 30-day public record, be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Adams, may we have the staff report, please?
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this is an administrative action that the sole purpose is to officially place all ordinances passed by you that affect city laws into the public record officially. It does not in any way affect the enforcement of the laws. The laws were effective when they were passed. This is merely completing the process and making it part of the city record and into the actual city code. The website is updated as these things are passed. This is the official master copy, if you will, and we do keep some paper copies. However, we're going to be keeping less paper copies to save some money in our budget this year. But this, if passed tonight, this will come back to you in 30 days to become its own ordinance and will also go in the code book in a year. But if you have any questions.
Ms. Calhoun.
I'm curious now if it's a 30-day public hearing, is it called?
It's a 30-day public hearing because we are actually enacting an ordinance that will go in the ordinance book, and so that's part of the process of this type of an action. And there is not really anything to comment on, but it's a process that we have to go through.
My curiosity was, if someone from the public did have something to say about it, would it make a difference? Because it's already been passed. Council.
Not likely. Sorry. Councilmember Calhoun, these are the laws. The laws have been enacted, and this doesn't affect those. This is merely a record-keeping thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's an administrative process we have to go through by law. Any other questions, discussion? All right, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go on to item number 5. Ms. Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Resolution 2018-040, an intergovernmental agreement with Cochise County for 2018 consolidated state primary and general election services be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Adams.
Mayor Mueller, members of council, this is our biannual IGA with Cochise County, who, between the Election Services Division and the Recorder's Office, does most of the heavy lifting for elections in this county. They prepare and mail all of the mail-in ballots. They run the polling places. They keep all of the records of the actual election day. And then, of course, they send you the results at the end of election day. The IGA is pretty clear on what they do, what we do, and the costs. This year, the cost budgeted is around $50,000, and that is for one election. That'll be our general election. There is no provision for a primary, and there is no budget for a primary because by earlier ordinance this year, you changed that and you won't be having a primary. So it is pretty standard, and it's something that we do every 2 years because they have the equipment, the personnel, and the training to run these elections that we do not.
Questions from Mrs. Adams? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment, Mr. Mayor. Since we did change that ordinance and we will be basically going to a general election only, I think at some point we need to talk about the dates to turn in signatures and even discussing a primary since we're not going to have that. Everything will be going to the general. Am I correct, Jill?
That is correct. When you passed the ordinance earlier this year to defer to the general, we didn't provide for any adjustment of the signature filing for candidates. We left those state requirements in place. But 2 years from now, you might, in advance of the next election cycle, might want to look at that and align all of our filings and requirements with the July dates that are used for general election filings only. Yes.
Along with signs, I
Yes.
think is the
Signs, we did.
We did align?
Yeah.
Okay.
For city races, signs are going to be based from the general election day.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Ms. Adams, for clarification to those who may not be aware of it, wasn't there something in that ordinance, it's an ordinance, related to the numbers of people who are running for office?
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, in the original proposed ordinance, yes, there was a primary would be held if there was this many versus seats. However, it was the decision of council to forego the primary completely, and so it is no longer, it is a moot point, yes.
Thank you.
So that's just something I feel like we need to address, so it wasn't a question.
You mentioned that it's 30 May for the filing date, the final filing date,
That is correct, 5
Or-
p.m.,
and
30 May,
the election is 6 November.
November, yes.
Right, but school board, other things that the general elections in November, they don't have to file until July, correct?
Yes, that is correct. If we had
So
had
it's more in
someone
line.
file an initiative paperwork would not have to be due until it's 120 days out. So it would be like July 6th.
So it'd just
And-
be lining everything up so there'd be
right,
no
If
confusion.
you find after this cycle that would make sense then
Yeah,
we can tweak the ordinance in a
I'm not
year or so.
talking about this cycle. No, I'm talking in the future. I just think that's something the council should discuss.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 6. Ms. Gray.
Item number 6. Oh, that's on the second sheet. Sorry. Mr. Mayor, I move that Resolution 2018-041, authorizing the filing of applications for the Federal Transit Administration for federal transportation assistance be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Normand, are you here? There he is. Okay. You gonna give us a report, please? Or is,
I'll do it.
are you gonna do it? Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is annual action that is taken by council to authorize the city attorney to sign the transit grants that the city submits to the Federal Transportation Administration. This action in no way obligates the city to submit or obligates the city to submit in any particular amount. It merely gives the city attorney the authority to sign any grant application that is submitted by the city on behalf of the transit system. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, discussion?
Clarification again. Doesn't the attorney sign all of those anyway?
This is we are required to designate by ordinance from the federal government. The
Okay.
attorney, and it's done annually.
Annually.
The other little piece
So this is a bureaucratic
okay.
housekeeping issue.
Well, I think we should do it. No, never mind. The other part of that is my misunderstanding about grants. So we usually have to put that into the budget, don't we? The requests we're making and.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Calhoun, yes, generally grants will be reflected in the budget as both a revenue item and then an offset to the expenditures. And we have a separate grants fund that handles
This is not authorization for a specific grant. This is giving him the authority to sign for grants as we apply.
Oh, okay. So we can
This
still.
is preliminary to that.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
They have to have the signature or the authorization on file. Got it. Basically is the issue. Okay. Anything else? Seeing nothing, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Next, we move to item number 7. Ms. Wolf.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Resolution 2018-042, modifications to the refuse fee schedule be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Felix, may we have the staff report, please?
Mayor, members of council, this is finally in front of you. This has been a long process. As you remember, 2 months ago, we had a discussion, an update of what was going on with the recycling, with the rates, and with everything else regarding the refuse fund. We did put out in the refuse fund due to the tipping fees from the county over the past few years. The tipping fees have gone up. The county has spent a lot of effort, the Rate Review Board has spent a lot of effort, as we've discussed, trying to mitigate their costs. The county has absorbed some of those costs over time and needs to be paid back. They finally got a plan together. As you know, this last year they did try to privatize it. The city managed to discuss their options to try and privatize the operations. They had no one bid on it, no one come forward to try and do any modifications to take it over for them. Unfortunately, with the operations of this landfill, it is, as I showed you on one chart, the highest cost landfill in the state, but it is also one of the most double line, all 80 EQ requirements, more so than maybe some of the other ones, so it is very environmentally friendly and safe. Unfortunately, last year, with the last changes that the county had to make to the tipping fees, and with the loss of commercial customers, the fund did lose about $700,000. Unfortunately, these are permanent structural deficits that are going to happen. So we came to you for a rate increase. Now, recycling does play a part of it. Recycling was included in the analysis of the rates going forward to this coming year because of what's happened in China and other areas. But just to clarify, because I know it's come up a couple times, we'd be standing in front of you requesting a rate increase if the China situation in recycling had not occurred. Refuse is a funny business. It is a volume business. There is a reason that when the lobby groups went to the state legislature, they only wanted to take commercial first, then multifamily residential for apartment complexes. They did not go to the legislature to take residential. They did wish to cherry pick the customers off, and that's what they've done. Unfortunately for us, we do have a rate set by ordinance, so any private hauler can walk into a business and say, I'll undercut you by $1, and many of the businesses have taken them up on that. Some of them over time have discovered that the rates have gone up over what we charge. A couple have looked to come back, but turned around, and Waste Management and the other private haulers on one phone call will drop the rate right back to where it's at. So that is just the way we have to operate. We have to operate with a set fee schedule. We're not set to negotiate prices with anyone, which is also part of the reason why when we're discussing this rate increase, we're only looking at the residential side. Commercial, we've kept some of the customers we have because our people give excellent service. We've offered certain things to them that they value, and then some of them probably don't want to call Waste Management every couple months or Waste Disposal every couple months to get their rates changed back down. So we've been fortunate with what we have. Of course, there are some people who would never want to be with us and never want to be with the private hauler just based off of experiences. What we're recommending to you is a 15% rate increase across the board for all residential. What that would be is would take a 45-gallon can, would increase $2.04 a month. 65-gallon can would increase $2.25 a month. A 95-gallon can would increase $2.57 a month. And a 195-gallon can would increase $3.62 a month. As you may remember, and the question always comes up about privatization, the private haulers in the area, the lowest rate that I have found from somebody who actually has one is $30 a month. This rate for a 95-gallon can would still only be $19.67 a month, so it's still 2/3 of the lowest private hauler that I've seen a bill on. The highest person was $47 a month. So to privatize to that, you can have a serious, a person can have a $200 or $300 increase in their bill based off some of what some of the private haulers are costing. We did notice this on the website 60 days ago as required by law, and then that allows you, as the recommendation at the time, to raise the rates up to, but not over 15%. If you wanted to do a lower amount, you can do that as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Felix. Questions for Mr. Felix? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Felix, I have a question. So we're about $700,000 below where we need to be. This, if we raise it 15%, that would bring us to an additional $310,500. So that's still roughly $400,000. So what do we do?
Well, part of what we're doing is we're hoping with some of these changes that we're looking at for the routes and things like that we can get some efficiencies out of it. We're looking at seeing how much of that is a one-time drop with some things, and so we don't want to do more than that. We know that there's plenty of people that are on a fixed income that this will take a little bit to help them absorb.
Right.
And the fact is, a year from now, depending on how the fund goes this year and into next year, we'll look at a different rate increase. Again, hopefully everything's stabilized at the county. Hopefully the international recycling can stabilize and maybe some things can change. So we're trying to look at that, and we don't want to pass two resolutions to do a 2-year increase like we had done one other time, because there's still some uncertainty out there on what else is going on.
Okay.
But we've also had, as I said, we have had some people come back and interested in coming back, so we're hoping that we might be able to get some of those customers back as the different companies continue
You're talking
to
about commercial?
Commercial, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Felix.
Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just a question. And the $700,000, as I understand it, is what we owe to the county for the services that they've covered.
No, the $700,000 was taken out of the sewer funds or the refuse funds reserves.
Okay.
It did have, or it's slowly built, we've slowly built up over time a reserve, and we do it for this reason, so that we don't have to change rates at every single drop. But that has dipped into the refuse funds reserves last year. There's still reserves in there. There's still over $700,000 of reserves in there, so we can help, again, met this out over time, so we don't have to
Yeah,
come
but if
forward
I-
with a 30 or 40% rating.
But doing that twice
That's
is.
strategic.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Mueller, members of the council. To Council Member Calhoun's question regarding what the system owes the county, that rose to about $2.3 million. And that was the overall county, not just Sierra Vista. And that was the reason why the county raised last year the tipping fee to $64 a ton. Since 2009, the tipping fee is increased at the county landfill from $47.75 per ton to the current $64 a ton. So those are pretty significant increases in tipping fee, which is one of the major components, although not the only component. And I'll just quickly go over the reasons because I think it's important to understand that. Again, as Mr. Felix mentioned, refuse is a volume business. The more volume you have, the better the systems operate, more revenue comes in. So we experienced a loss of tonnage due to population loss, due to the downturn on Fort Huachuca during those years. We lost construction waste, which was a very good contributor from private haulers due to a lack of construction during those years. Reduction of business activity due to a loss of businesses that we experienced during those years, meaning a loss of commercial accounts. Legislative activity for allowing for privatization of commercial accounts, which have eroded our commercial accounts. Increases in tipping fees from the county system, which I mentioned, and of course the recent changes to the recycling market, which we're trying to stave off here in a quick fashion because those costs could go up. I do want to mention that the city has been very responsible with regards to rates over the past number of years. The last real increase in residential rates occurred in August of 2005. There was a $1 recycling fee implemented in 2008 because of the way we were operating the recycling at that point. There were some admin fees added in 2009. In 2012, that recycle fee was changed and included in the base fee. And then in 2013, for 2014, council actually lowered that amount because we went to the one-on-one system, and that improved our efficiencies. The recyclables were able to be taken to the transfer station at $0 per ton, and of course now we're looking at $90 or so per ton for recycling. But council actually lowered rates in 2013. So in reality, outside of the recycling fee changes since 2005, council has not altered changes at all, in spite of all the challenges we faced that I just mentioned. So the record is clear in terms of the responsibility of the city with regards to refuse rates.
Okay. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm really concerned about the fact that we would be voting to increase it by 15%, but that's not, it's going to take care of maybe little less than half of the problem. And then next year, basically what I'm hearing is that we'll have to increase it again. Hopefully we don't. And I'm concerned about this hope. As my dad used to say, you can hope in one hand and put Rice Krispies in the other, and which one is going to fill up faster.
My dad didn't say Rice Krispies.
Well, I might be paraphrasing a little bit. And I'm really concerned that we're going to come back and have to revisit this whole thing again. And to go along with that, what other alternatives have we looked at to even maybe reducing fuel costs? I know that on the slide on Tuesday, it stated that we're spending about $1,200 a day in fuel. have we looked at any way and possibly reducing that fuel? For example, what if we went to 4 days a week, 10-hour a day? Would that make any difference in that reduction?
Can I jump on something here? One of the things I think we all need to realize is this is going to have to be revisited as long as the market is unstable. And so we may be talking about this in 6 months. We may be talking in another year or both. So,
I
and that's
understand that.
that's the nature. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast.
And I understand that. And I guess my issue is I don't really feel like we've really talked about all the possible alternatives.
Well, the other
have
issue I
been
was
able
going
to
to
come up.
share with you is we're talking about the garbage, whether it's recycling or regular trash. It's still the same volume of things, and we may be able to in the next several months consolidate routes, which would save on wear and tear on vehicles, paying drivers, etc. But I don't think we have a good mechanism to provide a crystal ball to find out what those things are so that we can act right now. And if we don't act right now, the cost will continue to roll right along there. And I think we need to act right now. But that's just my opinion. I'll let David answer the rest of your.
Mayor, Councilmember Wolf, the Refuse Fund every year reviews their routes and things like that. You can only drive down, you have to drive by every house, whether a can is out or not. And in an 8-hour day, 9-hour day, you can only pass so many houses, and you can only go so fast. You may get done, if half the cans are not out on one day, yeah, you get done at a different time. But the next day, every can may be out. And so you have the route set based off the average time that they will go by and pick the cans up. Gasoline, although a decent one, the single largest expenditure in that fund is the tipping fee. When you get your budget book coming up here, you'll see we're budgeting over $1.2 million next year for tipping fees to the county. That is, as you looked at the rates, the comparison rate, if we were in Pima County, you'd remove that by at least a third. That is the biggest thing, that's the biggest effect, and that's the biggest way to change it. I know that we're keeping up to date with newer trucks to get as fuel efficient as we can. I know like they've tried every other options on various things on how they're doing it, but I know refuse they're always very concerned, and they've always been operating as thin as they can. That's how we can have a rate so much less than the private haulers as well. One other legislative item that we did not mention that does affect it as well is we used to be able to hold the property owner liable for tenants. We also used to be able to charge a vacancy to the home if it's vacant, because honestly, if your next door neighbor's house is empty, we still have the cost of the driver, we still have the cost of the fuel, you still have to drive by that house every day when it's occupied. The only savings is a tipping fee. Well, with legislative action that happened, we can no longer charge that vacant home for the fixed cost of the system. So that has also affected it.
Mr. Petichik, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, we want to really get to what we can do to address the situation in the future. There are many reasons why we're in the situation we're in today, but to get to Councilmember Wolf's question, I believe the changes to the system that we discussed at the last work session with regards to reducing the recycling pickups will allow us hopefully to consolidate at least one of our routes, and we should be able to generate some savings from that. The reason for that is the increase in terms of refuse pickup to the additional 2 days a week should smooth that out and allow our trucks more time to be out on the routes as opposed to spending more time going to the transfer stations on Monday and Tuesday. The other thing too is we're stopping hopefully the losses that we're looking at in terms of recycling right now by going to those routes. So those two things combined with the rate increase, we hope will get at the problem. I believe the tipping fee increases at the county are stable at this point. We've been able to pay back the supervisors $300,000, and over the next 6 years at this rate, we should be able to pay back the supervisors and also keep the rate stable. So hopefully with some economic growth and some commercial growth, we'll also see an increase in customers as well. So that is our hope. It is hope, I admit that, but we don't want to pass along, 25 or 30% increase all at once, and that's why we're recommending the 15 this time.
Yes, ma'am.
I still really have a lot of questions about all of this, and I feel strongly that we still need one more work session to go about this. And I would actually make a motion that we table this till at least one more meeting to talk about
We
it.
have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I'll second for discussion's sake.
Discussion purposes? Any further discussion?
I have other questions about how much would it cost if we took the commercial business out of the refuse fund? How much would it cost for the residential to basically support itself?
Well,
Session.
And this would be something that I would like to go over in the work session. My other questions would be, what other alternatives have we looked into? Have we looked at what other communities are doing? Have we thought about maybe doing community bins for recycling, which I think would also help to clear up the contamination rates? Because the people who are really interested in recycling are going to be the ones who are going to drop it off, and you're not going to have the blue bin just being used as extra garbage.
That would be a relatively simple thing for us to implement, and I don't see, why we couldn't do something like that.
And what I foresee is that we need, regardless whether we approve the increase or not, we need to, as I've said before, we need to have a public education process so people know there are new standards for recycling. They need to be cleaner than they were in the past, and that needs to happen. And what was your first concern?
My other concern is it seems to me that the commercial business rates may be subsidizing the residential rates a little bit, and I'm interested to see what it would cost if the residential rates supported themselves.
So what you're suggesting then is a greater increase for the residential rates down the road.
I am not sure at all what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that I don't feel like
my
I have
understanding
enough
is the
information.
commercial rates, when you put the two together, we're making a little bit more money on a commercial rate, and that helps the entire system. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Mayor,
not
that
oodles
would
of
be
money.
correct. Commercial's a little different animal, uses different trucks. The routes aren't necessarily as efficient, and also it's especially drivers that need to go into these areas in terms of it's a little tricky sometimes to get into some of these dumpsters. So it's a little different animal than residential. Just taking and there's more volume there too. So it's if we that will the residential commercial rates may be a little higher than probably what they could be.
I agree with holding off just a little bit longer on making this decision. And one of the things that I think could happen during this period of time was there have a lot of ideas about what is possible. And of course, sometimes it's not based on what you know to be fact, what we know to be fact from Public Works. But it doesn't hurt, I think, to air a little more of hearing what the public may have to add to some of the solutions you might be looking for, we might be looking for, and alternative action. So I recommend we at least hold off for another period of time.
And I will say I disagree with you. This has been out there for at least 60 days. We've had three people comment on the internet. One said, two of them basically said, do away with recycling. The other one said they were okay with the rate.
One said raise.
And we've had some comments on how we need to educate the public, and that should be an ongoing thing regardless of whether we vote on it tonight. And we need to have plans to do that, so
I just handed out a document, though, that had some suggestions. It may not be a solution, but it's some suggestions.
Well, and I appreciate that fact, and I think as I read through them, most of them can be done regardless as when we do the rate. My concern about voting tonight is we could easily go deeper in debt, is number one. And that's never a good thing, especially when we're trying to be fiscally responsible with public funds. The other thing is, I'm not sure, based on my understanding, that we're going to have any different outcome other than the 15%. And again, I'm looking just at the rate increase. I don't think we're going to have any other outcome offered that makes more sense than what's been offered right now. The other thing is, if there is an option that comes up after we've had potential to look at route consolidation and all these other things to save a little more money, there's nothing that will prevent us from coming back and changing the rate again. So I'm not willing to delay it any further. Yes, sir.
Mayor, members of council, one important thing to also consider is, unless you pass this by July 1, and after today it would have to be with an emergency clause, since the rates do not go into effect for 30 days, you would have a lower revenue next year because all the year in advances are billed in July. So for year in advance people, they would not see any rate change in their rates because they're not billed again until the following January. So the revenue you would get from this rate increase would exempt, all those people would be exempt from it.
Rachel?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember Wolf, I understand your need for wanting to table it, and I agree with wanting to have more discussion on this. My concern is when I look at the 15% that we're voting on tonight, it still doesn't cover everything. So I think it's in order for us to have a work session and possibly make it a priority on the strategic plan to figure out how to make that gap not bigger than it already is, because it looks like regardless 15% is going to, we need to do something to close that gap right now, is what I'm saying. So I'm not in favor of tabling it tonight, but I am in favor of further discussion on this.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments? Seeing no other comments, I'll call for the question. The question is to table whether or not we table item number 7. And we would table it pending what? We need to have a, I don't think it was included in the motion, but normally when you table something, you say you're going to table it, and then pending some action so that we can bring it back after that action is completed, or a date.
To me, it would be pending more information and more numbers run. I just don't feel like we've been
So
given.
you're looking for pending an additional work session, or
with more information.
with
more
additional
numbers.
information, and you'll provide that specific information to the staff?
I
for
sure would.
questions. Okay. Does everybody understand the motion? Yes. Okay. The motion is whether we table or not, Bob. Item number 7. All those in favor of tabling? Opposed? It fails 4-2. We now go back to the motion. Is there any further discussion on the original motion? Seeing none, I'll call. Yes, ma'am.
My apologies. I would like to ask if you could elaborate more on what would be the implications for the city's budget, keeping the rates unchanged.
We would then, as the budget is going to come to you, because it was not voted on as we finish these out, we would be using reserves to fund the deficit. If this is approved tonight, when you get the final book, we would increase the revenue and decrease the reserve usage of the fund.
At current levels, we can operate one more year, without going into a deficit position in the refuse fund.
So we're still in the black?
In the fund itself, yes.
In the fund. Okay. So, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It passes 4-2. Thank you very much. We now go on to call to the public. We have two members of the public that would like to address us this evening. The first is Ms. O'Daniel. Daniel? And you've been here before, so you know you got 5 minutes, and we'll let you know when your time is up. She's going to do it herself.
I was told that I could sit down, so we're going to try how this works.
Doesn't that table lower?
Yeah, the table is lower.
Is that comfortable? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is this volume okay?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Mayor Mueller and city councilors, my name is Donna O'Daniel. My subject today is so-called white privilege. 2 weeks ago, what appeared to be a white person stood before you castigating his own so-called race. Of course, what he and so many others deny is that there is only one race, the human race. The Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 17, verse 26, correctly stated that God, quote, has made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, close quote. The color of one's skin, be it dark or light, is simply a matter of how much melanin each person has in his skin cells. The more melanin, the darker the skin. The attack on whiteness comes in part from far-left educators. Georgetown University professor Preston Mitchum declared, quote, yes, all white people are racist. Also, on Christmas Eve 2016, a professor from Drexel University boldly tweeted, quote, all I want for Christmas is white genocide, close quote. Also, whites who adopt black hairstyles have been condemned for cultural appropriation, but no one levels the same accusation at race hustler Al Sharpton when he straightens his hair. Elites in political circles, the media, and academia decry white privilege as one of the structural flaws of American society. The words white privilege are slung as an epithet by liberals in order to cause racial division, undermine Western culture, and make way for Marxism. In many of the violent incidents of this cultural revolution in our midst, agents of the Revolutionary Communist Party, Socialist Workers' Party, Communist Party USA, and Workers' World Party can be identified in photos and videos as key participants and leaders. The instigators of the American Cultural Revolution also call for the destruction of statues, flags, and anything else that points to our history. What they fail to acknowledge is that our white founding fathers gave us our constitutional republic, which allows these agents of destruction to scream their hatred of these American heroes, whose civilization was the one that birthed the whole concept of human rights to begin with. Today, Antifa thugs, snowflake bullies, media elites, and college professors are attempting a similarly profound transformation of America. The demonization of whites has now reached a fever pitch. Division and destruction define the anti-white movement. For instance, Hunter College sociology professor Jesse Daniels stated, quote, "The white nuclear family is one of the most powerful forces supporting white supremacy," close quote. But there have been other cultural revolutions with dire consequences. From 1966 to 1976, Chairman Mao unleashed his Red Guards to terrorize China into total submission by his great proletarian cultural revolution. Before 1966, the Chinese Communist Party had prepared the way for this violent convulsion with intense ideological indoctrination similar to what we are witnessing in our nation today. Tens of thousands of churches, temples, statues, and monuments were destroyed in China. In the aftermath of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, all that was left were millions of dead bodies, and those who remained alive were totally cowed into submission. If not correctly identified and halted, this anti-white movement and the other aspects of America's cultural revolution will result in increased leftist power and ultimately Western civilization's destruction. The little booklet titled "The Left's War on Whiteness" and the article titled "Racial Demonization for Profit and Power" in this issue of the New American will help to inform and prepare us to counter this drive toward totalitarianism. I have brought a copy of each for you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Donnell. I just want to make sure, I know you're new, this is probably the second or third time you've addressed us, but pursuant to Arizona State Statute, subparagraph 38-431-01-H, as is stated here, you're granted the privilege of addressing the City Council. However, your comments must be on issues within the jurisdiction of the City Council, i.e. city business. If you deviate from this requirement, the mayor has the right to revoke your speaking privilege. I just want to make sure you're aware of that, because there are folks probably sitting on this side of the dais as well as folks sitting out in the community that may say this doesn't specifically deal specifically with city business, and you're giving us, we understand you're giving us kind of an overall national view, which we appreciate your opinion, but again, that may not necessarily be city business. So I'll just let you know that that's part of the state law here in Arizona.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to say, though, if we had some, I can't think of the word I want, some trouble here in the city of Sierra Vista regarding the so-called white privilege issue. I'm white. A lot of you are white. And this is affecting a lot of our public schools today. Our teachers are being told to teach this in our schools. And so I think it may very well impact us at one point.
Well, thank you for sharing your opinion.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Andre Newcomb.
The gentleman that spoke last time, 2 weeks ago.
Ma'am, your time has expired.
Good?
If you're an equal opportunity employer, that's talk there was relevant. This is the last meeting before the 50th anniversary of Robert F. Kennedy's assassination. A lot of young people will not understand how very important that was. John Kennedy had been killed a little while before that, and people were trying to bring that back and to lift us out of trouble with the civil rights, and Vietnam was raging then. There was a lot happening. The campuses were going crazy. They were a lot of trouble around the world also. And when I look at the news, and I have been looking at the news now since 1960, you learn a lot. And I look at this community and I see how so very much of this community is a paper tiger. You know, we have that hospital out there, and they get Medicaid and Medicare, and they raid Wall Street rather regularly for insurance money. Yeah, we have the education, we have the military, we have BHA, we have food stamps. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All you have to do, it seems, is just to have a school book, you know, and you're set for life, you know. And it's very, very difficult to try and be honest, you know, when your police are armed with lethal authority, and you have taxing authority, and you exercise it regularly. I don't think it's very nice for a taxing authority who carries weapons to run jokes on people. We have several jokes here in this community that is official. We have a police chief who looks like Jerry Brown. We have a police chief whose last name is Thrasher. We have birds that go around on the landscaping, and they are thrashers, and they put holes in the ground. That's one of the jokes. His first name is Adam. We have Jill Adams, and we have Adam Curtis, an Adams family here. That is not very funny for a taxing authority who carries weapons to be making jokes that people don't even know about. There are other jokes that go on that are just not really nice. And for some people to know that these things go on, while you can spend a lifetime looking and learning and living under their rule, you know, the Chamber of Commerce has their friend at 911. So everyone seems to be in the money, whether it's with the school book or whether it's a cash register, and they call 911. And yet they're making jokes. That is all they seem to want to do, is make jokes of the people. To tell me what window I can look in is not nice. That's a joke. When I fall asleep and I'm told that I've been looking at things I shouldn't be looking at, because who knows? Your women seem to be 50% of your electorate, and they have a little bit of a cutting problem themselves, and they want to exert that balance of their existence upon everyone else. That seems to be a joke. We have a joke where everyone seems to know that the cut that happens will let her defend him, let her have it the way she wants it, and we'll just get our cut. You know, a little piece of the action, you know, and it's just not good for people to know that you are a taxing authority who carry weapons and makes jokes to the people.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. We'll now move on to comments and requests by the council. We'll start tonight with Mr. Blanchard. Bob?
I have nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchard. Mrs. Calhoun?
I just would like to wish everyone a very happy and festive weekend and holiday.
Thank you, Ms. Calhoun. Ms. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to give kudos to our Community Development Department, who have been dealing with the new dental clinic, which Urukawa Dental Clinic, that's coming up as in Public Works as well, I believe. And in talking with the developer who is developing this property, I've heard nothing but good things about these departments and the work that's been done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Ms. Wolf?
I am just really happy that we have 2 more commissioners on the Tourism Commission. So I'm really excited to be working with you guys in the future and what we can accomplish. And also, I hope that everybody enjoys Sips and Skies this weekend. I know that staff has been working really hard to get that going, and I'm sure it's going to be a fabulous event. Thank you.
And beautiful wine cups.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf.
Yeah.
Ms. Ash, Mayor Pro Tem Ash, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would first like to congratulate all of the high school graduates, especially those who are graduating from Buena High School tonight. We're so very proud of you. And as I reflect on my own graduation from Buena High School, class of 2009.
Yeah.
As I reflecting on my graduation, I just am so grateful that I was able to grow up and still able to live in a community that is incredibly diverse. A lot of it due to the diversity of our military, our wonderful military town here, in a community that really fosters great relationships with our police officers, our active duty military, retirees, and veterans. And it really is a privilege for me to call Sierra Vista home.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ash. I do have a couple things. First, I also want to congratulate our local graduates. Last night I had the honor of being the keynote speaker for the Brain Academy graduation, and they had over half of their class it's a small class, but over half their class were members of the National Honor Society. So that was impressive. The Buena grads go tonight, and I want to congratulate them and their families as well. And those folks that are running around town, please be aware that the police have got all types of traffic restrictions and safety issues that they're dealing with tonight to make sure that goes off very well. Also, is it 6 or 6:30 is the music in the park? 6:30. 6:30? 6:30 in the park. We have the Desert Swing Band. It's always a good group. It's always nice as the sun's going down to get out there as the evening is cooling off to enjoy great music, and there's always a good crowd. Saturday we have Sips and Skies in the park. And what time does that start? 11 o'clock. And we also have entertainment available, right, later? Okay. And then of course, Sunday is the brunch and the wine tour, et cetera, that you had to sign up for already. And I think it's probably fully subscribed, so it's sold out. Good job. On a more serious note, it is Memorial Day at 8:30 at Arizona the State Veterans Memorial Cemetery. It will be the ceremony at 8:30. The Old Post Cemetery will have another ceremony at 11 o'clock. And, of course, the Cochise Memory Gardens will also have a ceremony at 11 o'clock. So I would highly recommend you take time to remember those who have served to make our community and our country great. Also, people who are traveling, please drive safe. Watch out for the other guy. We want you to come back if you're leaving the community. And watch again. We want you to be safe on the road. The other thing I'll mention is I'm glad to see I got one of my fellow scouts in here working for his badge. So thanks for being here tonight as well, young man. And with that, I can't read. Oh yeah, my last note. I just have one personal note. We talked a little bit about elections, but actually I'm officially filed for the office of mayor as of today. So with nothing else before the council, meeting's adjourned.
No. Okay. That's okay. I'm not. Just